Hello everyone, Lawrence here, and this is a gaming computer. It's really powerful, but also incredibly heavy, so you can't really take it with you anywhere. Right here is one of the slowest computers I've ever worked with in my life, but it weighs less than a kilogram, so really easy to take with me. Now, something I personally have always been really interested in is what if we could just have some really powerful computer somewhere and stream it to a very portable device, giving you the best of both worlds. A bit of Miley Cyrus style. Well, I think we finally found a solution for that. Today I'll be doing a review on Shadow, a game streaming service with a bit of a twist. It's not like OnLive or NVIDIA Grid or Google Stadia for that matter. It's actually a dedicated graphics card with a virtual machine attached to it that you can stream right to your portable device, and it works just like you would have a real physical computer. So let's dive in and see what it's like. Okay, so the Shadow thing is pretty interesting sounding, right? So how do you actually use it? Well, first of all, you go to shadow.tech, and there you can download a client for multiple types of devices, be it a laptop, an Android television, your iPhone, a tablet, a desktop even. You can get it on whatever you want. So I already downloaded here to my computer. Now, once you've installed it, the client will look a little something like this. It's just a portal to enter your own cloud gaming computer. But a thing to do first is to go into the settings and enable USB peripherals. So you can take a little USB cable, plug it in, and now your Xbox controller is passed through directly to your virtual system. We'll be using this in just a second. Let's put it away for now. But the way it works, incredibly simple. You just click Start Now and it will open a connection to that virtual gaming computer. So then when you connect it, you can see your Shadow in this little window, but you can go full screen just like that. And now it's like having a really powerful gaming system that's also incredibly portable. Let's open up the task manager and see what we actually got in here, because there are two different versions and you can't really choose what you get. As you can see right here, I have an 8-core Xeon at 2.5 GHz. That's the same for everyone. What's also the same for everyone is the SSD, which is a 256 GB model. Now, the write speeds are a bit slow at 200 megabytes a second, and the reads are only 500 megabytes a second. For gaming, that's perfectly fine. For video editing, that's not quite enough in my personal opinion. And also the capacity is pretty low. So you will have to download games and remove them quite often. And so what's really nice about that is if we just go and do a little speed test, we can see that we have a full or almost full gigabit download speed on this virtual server, even if your home connection doesn't quite have that. Same for the upload speed. We should get about 100 megabits a second upload, even if your home connection doesn't have that. Now, interestingly though, you will need a pretty decent internet connection at home in order to use this service. And more importantly, you'll need one without a data cap, because this burns through data incredibly quickly. You will be using upwards of 15 megabits a second, ideally around 50 megabits a second when you're actually using Shadow. So make sure your internet connection is really good, otherwise this is completely useless to you. But moving back, there's one final bit to check out, our graphics card. What sets Shadow apart from other services like it is you get a dedicated graphics card, and that will be a GTX 1080 or in my case a Quadro P5000. I'm actually quite happy to get the Quadro. Now, you do get an actual card. It's not like with NVIDIA's Grid, for example, or with OnLive, where it's a virtualized graphics card. This is like proper bare metal performance. So if you want to know how fast it is, you can just look up GTX 1080 reviews and you'll know how fast the service will be for you. However, that said, let's boot up a game. I'm just going to go with Rocket League to show just how well the integration with the controller worked. As I said, all I had to do is enable the USB peripherals thing, and it'll work perfectly fine, as we'll see in just a bit. What it doesn't do is USB stick pass-through, so don't think that you can just plug in an SD card or a USB drive and have everything available right here. And I actually think it would be really nice if the people at Shadow would create some sort of VPN tunnel to easily share files between your physical device and your Shadow in the cloud somewhere, because right now that's just a little bit difficult. But as you can see, I didn't have to touch anything, it just works. And even if I just switch to my phone right now, it'll just work perfectly fine. And right away, this is, it is working. Also, the audio works like really well. The latency is incredibly good. So this was the most interesting bit to me, and we can actually have a look at that latency right here. So we could see that here we were at 60 FPS because that's what I set it to, but our latency is only 19 milliseconds. So for me pressing my trigger button or my A button or my mouse click, it takes 19 milliseconds to put that signal to their server and then send it back to me. I think that's just very impressive actually. And I could not really notice a difference between gaming out here on Shadow or actually gaming on my own gaming system locally. Because you have to keep in mind your display also has latency to it and they just cancel each other out really. I couldn't really notice much. So very impressive there. Now also for people who are more into eSports titles, like let's say League of Legends for example, the latency from their server to the game server you're on is probably a lot better than the latency from your own system to the game server. So it also cancels out a little bit. So maybe you only get 10 milliseconds of extra latency despite this thing having about 20 millisecond latency to it. So I think that's just really impressive. And honestly, same for image quality, it's amazing. Now I'm just going to move on to a slightly different scenario here. Because while Rocket League is fun and all, I also thought it would be really cool to use this for more professional, more creative professional or like YouTube content creator sort of, stuff. Because obviously a lot of you guys, you'll be streaming and maybe doing some stream compilations and you want to edit in the cloud instead of on your own device. Now this is where I'm not a big fan of that tiny SSD that I just mentioned, because the tiny SSD actually is a little bit slow. If we just open up Addo right here, we can see that our read speeds once topped out at 313 megabytes a sec, or writes, I'm sorry. So writes up to 300 megabytes a second and reads only just under 500, so it's not quite impressive performance-wise. And there's also not a lot of size to it. So with me having about 7 games on there, we're already maxing out that SSD. That said, if we just open up a little project here, we can see that it actually works just like your normal gaming computer or your normal workstation. It just works and you can play back video and it'll just work. I mean, the frame rate is not always as good, but it'll work and it's usable. That said, I would really like to see a professional version of Shadow, so something with that VPN tunnel that I talked about and a bigger SSD. That would be really cool for editing videos, especially when you're on location, for example. That would be super awesome to do. So obviously, as I said, you do get GTX 1080 performance. As you can see right now, this is Project Cars completely maxed out in every single way, and it runs very smoothly. We're getting well over 60 FPS, and this is just over Wi-Fi. So I have a pretty good Wi-Fi setup. It's really nice. But how about we take it from here? Let's pause the game and move over to my desktop, see what it's like over there. Alright, and here we are on the desktop. Again, got my controller plugged in and I can just resume from there. It's completely seamless. Now obviously you'll probably notice the pillars on the side. That's because it won't automatically change the screen resolution. So how about we move over to this 1440p ultra widescreen screen resolution and see what that's like. So here we are, 3440 by 1440 at 100 Hz. As you can see, it looks gorgeous, it works, and there's also, more importantly, no sort of banding going on in the sky areas. You can definitely see some compression artifacts in the asphalt and the dark areas, so they're trying to save bandwidth somewhere to get the latency better, but the resulting slightly lower image quality from streaming it over the internet doesn't seem to affect our latency at all. So overall, incredibly impressive, although I can't drive and talk at the same time. Right, so now that we saw what Shadow can do, let's discuss what it can't do. First of all, obviously it doesn't work when you haven't got an internet connection going to your device. Normally, if the internet's out, you could just play some game on your PC in single player or offline mode. Not possible with Shadow. And then there are a few other slight drawbacks. So no multi-monitor support, for example. Also, there is no way of supporting HDR and definitely not VR. And so that might be important or not important depending on what you intend to use it for. What was more important to me personally is I kind of wanted to use it as a mobile workstation and just use it to edit videos. And again, because there's not really an easy way to transfer files from your own device to the cloud device, that's not really possible. Also, the SSD is quite limited in both speed and in capacity, so that's something to take in mind as well. However guys, I'm overall very impressed with the service, especially the latency aspect of it, and it's definitely something worth recommending if you can't just put down the money to buy your own computer. Now, Shadow is 30 euros a month, so that's 360 euros a year, or about one Xbox One X per year. If you put it in 4 years that you would go with your desktop PC, for example, that means you could also just buy a 1500 euro desktop PC. And that desktop PC would then have an RTX 2060 or 2070, depending on the other hardware that you go with. So performance-wise, for the price, it doesn't really matter what you go with. One is portable, the other one isn't, but then one needs an internet connection. That's the main gist of this video. Guys, if you liked it, hit that like button, subscribe, the bell, all that sort of stuff. But for now, massive thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.